Helen, great to talk to you. What went wrong?
Hi, Beverly. Well, this current outbreak, it's the worst one that Taiwan's seen since the beginning of the pandemic. It's been traced back to airline crews in late April. So pilots at the national airline carrier, China Airlines, were staying in a quarantine hotel, a Novotel at the Taiwan airport. Now, the Taiwanese government had recently dropped the required number of days for air crews to quarantine down to 3 days, and left it up to them to monitor their own health and avoid going out for the following week. It appears some of them didn't do that, and some of them have gone out and actually sort of passed the infection into the community. There's still quite a bit unknown about exactly how it's jumped from the air crews to the community in such a large scale, but it really does seem to have caught the authorities, caught them off guard.
So they've taken steps to lock down to some degree. How serious and strict is this lockdown going to be?
It's actually not very strict at all. So what we have in the cluster is centred around New Taipei and Taipei City, both in the north, the two largest cities in the country. And the restrictions are largely voluntary. So all schools in Taiwan have been closed as of today, and public buildings and museums and those sort of venues and sports venues have been shut down in Taipei and in New Taipei. But aside from that, there's caps on private gatherings. You can't gather in more than groups of 5 if you're indoors or 10 if you're outdoors. But beyond that, it's largely up to people themselves to not gather in large numbers, to not take public transport, to not go to work. And so they really are relying on community compliance, which, that is one thing that is actually in Taiwan's favour. People are cooperating quite heavily, but the restrictions themselves are not that harsh.
And how are people responding to the restrictions?
There was a bit of panic over the weekend, especially when the numbers jumped from 29 on Friday to 180 Saturday and then 206 on Sunday. And it did spark a bit of panic buying, particularly because what people were told to do was a little confused to begin with. So we did see a few runs on the supermarket, the now ubiquitous sign of a lockdown of people hoarding toilet paper. But that's really been the only sign of people panicking too much. I mean, if you went out in the streets on Taipei and over the weekend, there was almost no one out there. You had I think a 70% drop in the number of people on public transport. So people really do seem to be taking it quite seriously.
Yeah. Drought is also hindering some key markets for Taiwan that could also be financially quite damaging into the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern at the moment because, as you said, Taiwan is not just dealing with an outbreak now. They've also had a long-running drought, which is the worst in 56 years. And there are a lot of fears that is going to affect the semiconductor manufacturing industry, it's essentially Taiwan's most critical industry, and there is one company, TSMC, which is the largest supplier of the world's semiconductors. There is a shortage of them. There's been a global shortage that began shortly before COVID and was made much worse by COVID. Now, because we are still trying to get on top of that, there are fears that the drought is going to affect the manufacturing as well. The manufacturing does use up a lot of water, and so the companies are sort of having to work quite hard to find other ways to make sure that their supply doesn't run out.
Yeah, extraordinary. So many challenges on so many fronts. Helen, good to talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.